Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dabo Swinney, the Clemson Tigers, kicking off their spring game this Saturday, and want to dive into some storylines and some players that I'll be keeping my eyes on as Clemson carries out their spring game. Right after that game, Saturday afternoon, we'll be hopping on and talking about what we saw. But I want to start with this idea that Clemson, I feel like, is just kind of flying under the radar for a lot of college football media members. You look at this team, they don't make the flashy moves in the transfer portal like Florida State, like Miami, but you go back to that 2023 year, and I think a lot of Clemson fans understand, yes, that was a frustrating season, but also that Clemson team was not far off from being that dominant Clemson team that we are used to seeing. If you see that passing attack take that step, if you see that offense manufacture some more explosive plays, this Clemson defense, I've said, I think was going to be a top 5 defense in the country in 2024. This is one of the more dangerous teams in college football. I want to get into some spring game storylines. Excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Clemson Tiger fans. It is no secret this program has been a blast for me to talk about, whether we're talking spring intel, the recruiting trail, and the amount of support the Clemson fans have shown the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in terms of players or storylines that you'll be keeping an eye on. And without further ado, let's get into this one. And I think on the top of the list for every single Clemson fan is, what does this passing attack look like in 2024? And we're going to get our first glimpse of it during this spring game. And let's start with Cade Klubnik, who, no doubt struggled a little bit in 2023. But I want to talk about what this passing attack looked like from a schematic standpoint, where you just didn't see Clemson really push the ball down the field that often in 2023. And because of that, Clemson really struggled to create space and create opportunities for playmakers to get the football in space, right? When you're only throwing the ball 20 plus yards down the field, 9% of dropbacks, and only 10 plus yards, 30% of dropbacks, you get a defense is really scrunching down on this Clemson offense. And you just didn't see Clemson have the ability to get their playmakers in space. The number one thing that I'm going to be looking for is Garrett Riley kind of putting some confidence into Cade Klubnik, saying, hey, you got a very talented arm. We have no question marks about Cade Klubnik's arm talent. We're going to ask you to push the ball down the field. We're going to ask you to have defenses respect what you can do attacking the deeper third. Not only are you hoping to get some more explosive plays out of that passing attack, but I think more importantly, make defenses have their safeties respect what Clemson can do down the field, opening it up for that short and intermediate passing game, where that's where Clemson wants to do most of their damage. It's just hard to do damage there if you're not making defenses respect what you can do down the field. And I think just as important as Cade Klubnik pushing the ball down the field, Clemson needs wide receivers that can win down the field as well. A couple of guys that I'll be keeping my eyes on. One, Antonio Williams, moving out to that boundary spot. He's a guy that can win in so many different ways. And you go back to this passing attack, it was, a lot of wide receivers were banged up. I believe last year, about 12 months ago, Clemson was going through spring practice with a new offensive coordinator, a new starting quarterback, and about 2 healthy scholarship wide receivers. Most of these wide receivers are healthy, building that chemistry with Cade Klubnik. I think the question is, what wide receivers are going to step up and be that vertical threat? Is it true freshman Brian Wesco? Is it true, or is it a junior Adam Randall? Those are some of the questions I think Clemson fans have. Obviously, you have TJ Moore coming in the summer. That's going to be another option for Clemson to use down the field. That's my biggest question mark for this Clemson passing attack is, do we see Garrett Riley ask Cade Klubnik to push the ball down the field? And are there wide receivers that are stepping up to be those vertical threats in this Clemson offense? Next question mark I have, or storyline, I should say, for this Clemson offense is, what does the running back depth look like? Many of the Clemson fans know I think Phil Moffitt is one of the better running backs, not only in the ACC, but in the country. Phil Moffitt is going to get a heavy workload for this Clemson offense. But I think the question is, who is going to step up and be kind of that running back too in this Clemson offense? A couple guys that I think are garnering some excitement. Now, I think you just want to see, all right, who is going to kind of come in and take that running back 2 spot, and really provide that depth in the running back room. You go to the offensive line. I like this offensive line a lot. It is loaded with guys that have played a ton of football at the college football level, and that's one of the most important things you can have on an offense, right? Experience, guys that have played together. That center position is going to be really interesting in terms of who is going to win that starting spot. I'm really high on what this offensive line can be, and I'm kind of excited to see how that puzzle comes together in that spring game, kind of giving us a hint of what that offensive line is going to look like in 2024. Now, moving to the defensive side of the football, the Clemson fans know I think this defense can be extremely exciting in 2024. And I think largely why I'm so excited about this Clemson defense is I think this front seven can be one of the better units in the country. We just did a Clemson-Georgia roster battle last night. I took Clemson's defensive line over Georgia. That tells you kind of how high I am on this Clemson defensive line. I think the biggest storyline coming out of spring practice is second-year Peter Woods moving to that edge position. I think you have one of the more elite edge rushing duos in TJ Parker and Peter Woods. One, how does Peter Woods' body look? How does he look rushing from that edge? We know he can do it from the high school ranks. I'm excited to see what that shakes out as. And then the second question is, what does the depth look like behind that edge rusher position? I think a large part of kicking Peter Woods out to that edge spot was, hey, we don't have a ton of depth for our defensive ends, right? We're loaded on the inside with guys like DeMonte Capehart, Peyton Page, Trey Williams. But on the outside at that edge position, the depth is largely a question mark. So not only TJ Parker, Peter Woods, who are some other of those guys that are going to step up and provide depth on that defensive line, specifically at that edge position. You look at the linebacker spot, not many questions about that. I think Barrett Carter, Wade Wood, as you inject a guy like Sammy Brown, that is going to be a really strong linebacker room. I think Barrett Carter, one of the best linebackers in the country. Sammy Brown is going to where I'm going to have my eyes on. I know what we have with Barrett Carter and Wade Wood as. What do we have with Sammy Brown? Is he going to be a guy that as a true freshman can come in and play at a high level? I think we know Sammy Brown has the physical traits to step on a college football field and match up physically. We've all seen the weightlifting numbers. I think a lot of it is, all right, what's between the ears? Is he diagnosing what's happening in front of him? Is he playing fast? That's kind of what you're looking for that Clemson linebacker room. But again, not many question marks at that linebacker spot. Besides, is Sammy Brown going to be a dude for Clemson as a true freshman? And then you look at the back end. I think the number one thing you're looking for is not only the health of this group, but I think more importantly, the communication. When I go back and watch Clemson with that young secondary in the bowl game against Kentucky, these guys are physically extremely gifted and can certainly play at a high level in the ACC and at the college football landscape. We saw that with our eyes against Kentucky. The big problem was with that defensive back room was the communication wasn't great. You saw busted coverages probably too much or more than you would like against Kentucky in that bowl game. And it makes sense when you're trotting out multiple true freshmen in that defensive backfield. You're going to have some breakdowns in communication. Are we going to see that get cleaned up heading into the 2024 year? Because if you do, I mean, I am extremely confident in guys like Terrell and guys like in that defensive backroom that can be very good. Jaden Lucas is another guy that I'm keeping my eyes on in terms of can he be a guy in that Clemson defensive backroom? Because we all know he has the talent. Now you just want to see him stay healthy and stay consistent. This is a Clemson team that I think a lot of Clemson fans are excited about. And I'll say this, if this offense shows some things and shows some life in this spring game, and I'm not going to read too much into it, but you want to see what it looks like. I mean, I'm going to be extremely high on this Clemson team. If this offense takes steps, if they can manufacture those explosive plays in that passing attack, I mean, book it. This is one of the most dangerous teams, not only in the ACC, but in college football. Can't wait for the spring game to happen. I'm just kind of craving football at this point. I get it's a spring game, but it's football on Saturdays. I'm going to take that anytime I can. Appreciate you guys rocking with the fellas again. All the support from the Clemson fans truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.